This is the Canadian Taxpayers podcast. We're dedicated to lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government. I'm joined by my friend and federal director, Franco Terrazzano. I'm Chris Sims. I'm the BC director. So we're going to take a deep dive into the new Liberal government's gun grab, or their so-called buyback program. We're going to get right down into that as far as how much money they're going to be spending on that. And in Waste Watch, we've got an awful story for you about wasting thousands of dollars on some fancy bureaucrats' fancy bathroom. Yeah, we actually spent money on that. First, let's get to fun stuff. Franco, how's it going? Are you in a hotel room? Have you moved to Ottawa yet? What's happening?
Yeah, no, I am in a hotel room. I don't know if you can hear the fan going on right now. So I'm really sorry if you can, but you know what? A few things. One, it's like 1,000,000 degrees in here. So I don't know, deal with it. And two, and more importantly is I have no idea how to turn off the fan. So the fan's going to stay on. But you know what, Simmerman, I'm doing so good for so many different reasons. I mean, number one, it's Calgary Stampede. I'm loving it. I'm having a good time here. Number two, I'm not a huge soccer fan, but Italy just won the Euro. So Franco's happy. And number three, it's my last day before I officially move to Ottawa. And I can't wait to hit the ground running out there. So Franco's doing good.
Oh, you'll have a lot of fun when you get to Ottawa. You have to try shawarma if you hadn't had it yet. Ottawa does shawarma best. It's basically Lebanese fast food. You can get beef or chicken and it puts it in a flat wrap with garlic. It's the best part of Ottawa. It helps take the sting out of the wastefulness out there. Out here, things are good. It's actually really quite nice in BC right now. Most places are mask free. You get to see people smiling in the grocery store again. Things, knock wood, are getting more back to normal. So that's really good to see. What really stuck though is our gas prices. If I can just go on a bit of a work rant here, our gas prices in Vancouver are more than $1.70 per liter. So even if we're just filling up our simple minivan or our sedan, our family sedan, it costs us more than $100. It's super expensive, and it's actually putting a ding in a lot of people's travel plans. And so that's really starting to hit people's bottom lines. A lot of folks aren't really able to foot their bills right now because often they used to cross the border to go down to the States to fill up on their commuter fuel. And that, of course, has been shut down for a year and a half. They're not allowed to cross the border. And here we are stuck with the highest gas price in North America. And I must point out, it's actually the highest gas taxes in North America. It's about 68 cents per liter. So that even beats, crazy California for gas taxes. So that's one of the downers out here. Other than that, though, the weather is fine and people are enjoying it.
You know, Simmer, whenever I hear about gas prices out in the lower mainland, for some reason, I always think about supply, right?
Yeah.
Of course, right? I mean, Alberta, BC, we've had some good back and forth over supply issues, pipelines, Trans Mountain. And it really brings to mind just, being in Alberta for the last day, it just really brings to mind Keystone XL and what happened there where you had President Biden, he pulled the plug on Keystone XL. And it really just comes to mind, how important it actually is to clean up our own backyard, right? To make sure that we can actually get stuff built in Canada without dragging taxpayers further and further into debt. Unfortunately, we have the Trudeau government making that harder with Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Law, Bill C-48, the discriminatory tanker ban. I could probably go on and on and on, but there is something else that I'd like to chat about when it comes to gas prices and taxes. And I got my notes here because it's pretty mind-boggling. So the Parliamentary Budget Officer, it's like the government's independent budget watchdog, they looked at how much it would actually cost to meet Trudeau's environment targets. And they said that we would need like an additional $91 per ton carbon tax or an equivalent of that, right? So maybe not a carbon tax, but some type of cost that is an equivalent to an extra $91 per ton. And that's on top of the $170 per ton carbon tax that Trudeau has already announced by 2030. So you add all of that up, and I mean, we're going to be dinged for policies that cost an equivalent to a $261 per ton carbon tax. Absolutely crazy.
That's nuts. When you break that down, I was looking at that math that you sent my way a couple of days ago. And if you break that down, that's about 60 cents per liter just in the carbon taxes on gas.
Crazy.
So if you're filling up that minivan we mentioned, or even your family sedan, that's about $40 per fill up just in those carbon taxes. And folks who are watching who aren't in BC, I can't stress to you enough. People fill up their vehicles for everyday life, and it's unaffordable here. Like people, I heard one lady actually gasp when she was at the gas station next to me the other day, because we commute all the time as well. People go downtown to Vancouver all the time here from the Fraser Valley. So if you want an unaffordable lifestyle, have these kinds of carbon taxes. That's just crazy. We can't afford this across Canada. Speaking of other gigantic costs, this really blew my mind. We really need to talk about Trudeau's gun grab. So we just saw that report from the government's independent watchdog that suggests that it could cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. It's more than the politicians even said it was going to cost. This is all on the so-called gun buyback program. So we need to dive into that. Okay, so we've been hammering away at Trudeau's gun buyback program recently, and I think this will remind quite a few of our listeners of the boondoggle. It was the long gun registry that happened a few years back in the mid-1990s. If you rewind any of those tapes, it was nuts. That was a taxpayer nightmare. It wound up costing us around $2 billion, and it didn't make us any safer, and they eventually scrapped the long gun registry. So you were sending me some of these documents, and you were taking a close look at them. Why do you think that it's important for us to fight Trudeau on this? I mean, we have our hands full with other things. Why are we diving into the gun issue?
Well, there's going to be some huge costs with Trudeau's latest gun policy, right? That gun buyback. And we're now learning that it could be up to $550 million more than what we were first told it was going to cost. Yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars more than what we were told, right? The Liberal Party, when they introduced this in their platform, they said it was going to cost about $200 million. And then we heard the minister in charge of this file say it'd be somewhere between $300 and $400 million. And now, we've talked about the Parliamentary Budget Officer before. It seems like they're working overtime over there because they just came out with a new report that says that Trudeau's gun buyback could cost up to $756 million. And that's just money to reimburse gun owners. That's not the full cost of this thing. So really, we're coming up on 2 years since this policy was first announced. We know it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars more than what it was originally supposed to cost, but we still don't know the full cost. The full cost.
This is nuts. So you're over 700 million, you're clocking in on $1 billion. And this stupid thing isn't even off the ground yet. If you take a hard look at it, it's giving us serious flashbacks to the long gun registry. And I need to be clear, actually, because a lot of folks call it a buyback and they mean that innocuously. This is not a buyback. This is seizure of private property. I am a firearms owner. Those are my guns. I sure as heck didn't buy them from the government. The government didn't give them to me. So they're not buying them back. If they took them, they'd just be taking them. So if we take a look at this from a policy perspective, though, can you explain how the program could go hundreds of millions of dollars over budget without even including the full costs? Like, how does that even work?
Yeah, I mean, what's kind of funny about this, Simmer, is that we're both really coming at this from different perspectives, right? You're an actual legal gun owner. I wouldn't even know what to do if I had a gun. I have no idea. But what I do know is a boondoggle when I hear one, and this is definitely going to be a boondoggle. And let me just go one step back, just for all of us non-gun owning Canadian taxpayers out there like me. So essentially, what's going on right now is Trudeau is banning a certain type of legal guns. And then what he's going to do is he's going to use taxpayers' money, our hard-earned income, to reimburse those legal gun owners. And I have to make this clear, is that in this program, Trudeau is targeting law-abiding Canadians. And here's where that's up to $756 million comes in. So that is just the cost just to reimburse legal gun owners for their guns, right? But it doesn't actually consider the cost to actually administer this thing, right? Hiring the bureaucrats, hiring the extra police officers, collection points to collect the guns, transportation costs to actually transport the guns. And you know what? The Parliamentary Budget Officer, they said they couldn't figure out those extra administration costs because apparently the government has no idea how much that's actually going to cost.
This just adds on to the problems. I mean, we're already $1 trillion in debt. This government, it just seems to take blowing money to an Olympic sport. Here they are wasting money, and we still don't even know how this thing's even going to work or not work. And we have examples of how this won't work. Like we have New Zealand, for example. Those admin costs got out of hand real fast. They were nearly double by the time they were finished, based on what the government had initially been estimating. They destroyed people's firearms, sometimes right in front of them. I've seen video of it where the person hands it in. Again, this is a legal, law-abiding firearms owner. They hand it in and they watch as they just take the barrel and bend it around. In some cases, this firearm has been in their family for years. It's quite something. And we're not even really sure about compliance. I've been reading articles and doing a few interviews here and there. And apparently right around the time of the so-called buyback or the banning, there is a big run on like 12-inch diameter PVC piping. So not so sure if they had a big plumbing problem there in New Zealand or if this was a coincidence that happened along with people not wanting to hand in the firearms. So how do we actually have a good estimate on how much Trudeau's gun grab is actually going to cost, or are we sticking to the 700 million mark here?
Well, no, we do know it's likely going to be way more expensive than that, right? So we don't have numbers from the government. The government hasn't been able to provide taxpayers with the actual number of this program, just some estimate on how much it's going to be just to reimburse legal gun owners. But fortunately, the Fraser Institute, they have a professor there from Simon Fraser University. He has looked into this. And what's really important here is that he says, if you just look at the cost to reimburse gun owners, it's going to fall way short, because he says the most expensive part of this type of program is the staffing costs, the actual cost to administer the program. And when he looked at those costs, this professor from Simon Fraser University, he said that staffing and administration costs could run between $1.6 billion all the way up to close to $5 billion. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely staggering when you include the full cost of this program. We could be talking about in the billions and billions of dollars.
This is just going to be the boondoggle of the long gun registry all over again. And for folks who weren't around for that, that was introduced by then the Chrétien government, Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, back in 1995. Back then, I remember this distinctly because my family have always been firearms owners. We grew up on hunted meat. We were told that it would cost around $2 million, and it wound up costing more than $2 billion with a B. So that conversion was pretty hard to take. We blew a lot of money on that. It was eventually scrapped by the Harper government. $2 billion, that's easy to say, but it's actually tough to understand. So to give folks an idea of how much money that is, that would take you 200 years to count to 2 billion. If you started right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would take you 200 years sitting here. That's how much money they blew on that mess. And again, it didn't make us any safer. In the CTF, Taxpayers Federation, back then, we were just in our infancy, but man, we played a big role in that. We played a big role in killing the long gun registry. We petitioned the Auditor General to audit the program, and her office at the time did so twice, and they found that the program was a huge boondoggle. We helped uncover that crazy misspending, and we kept pressure on the Conservatives until they eventually scrapped that program. It could have easily fallen off the wayside, but we kept the pressure on, and we need to do that again.
Yeah, and we will. And this fits squarely within our mandate, right? I mean, number one is the obvious. We just talked about the costs. This could come into the billions and billions of dollars. And I mean, that's so important right now. I mean, it's not like this government has a ton of money. It's not like this government has money just growing on trees, although maybe Trudeau thinks that's how his tax dollars are going to be coming in. But that's not the case, right? We're more than $1 trillion in debt. And then on top of the huge costs for this program to taxpayers, is maybe the more important issue is that this is not going to make Canadians safer. It is not going to make Canadians safer, even though it's going to cost us a ton of money. I mean, for starters, if you look at some of the data, we do have some from 2018. About half of the gun murders in Canada from 2018 came from handguns. And then you look at some other data, and it's upward past 70% of the crime that is committed with guns or gun-related crime actually happens from firearms that cross the border from the United States illegally. So it seems to me, just looking at some of the numbers, that the two major problems here are handguns and are the illegal flow of guns across the border. And guess what? Neither of those two massive issues are addressed by Trudeau's gun buyback.
Yeah, you make a huge point here. The vast majority of gun incidents that are illegal involve illegal guns, both illegally owned handguns and those illegal guns that come across the border. Not that many Canadians own handguns, but some of us do. It's called getting your restricted license, and you have to go through even more hoops to do that. You have to register with the local RCMP. They know where you live. They can enter your home at any time, actually, and you have to keep them safely stored, all that jazz. If you're a handgun owner, most of us firearms owners have our non-restricted, and that's for long guns. So that's for things like shotguns and rifles. It's a normal way of life for a lot of people, especially in rural and Western Canada. Like I said, I'm a firearms owner. All of my extended family nearly are all firearms owners, like all my cousins and that. So there's a lot you need to go through. And I just want to reassure people who are watching who may not be firearms owners, you can't just walk into a gun shop in Canada and buy one off the rack. It's not like you're buying a skateboard here. Like, you have to apply and you have to go through a major criminal records check. They do a deep background check if you want to own even just a deer rifle in this country. You have to go through a course, and it's usually taught by either an active duty or a retired RCMP member or a former member of the Canadian Armed Forces. You need to go through all of that. And then on top of that, there's lots of storage rules. If I want to go to the range, I need to arrange to do that. I need to transport it safely. So my point is, there is a lot of rules and permissions that go along with being a legal, law-abiding firearms owner in Canada. You even need to have special tags if you want to go for certain game. Like, if you want to go hunt a moose or a bear, you can't just go out and shoot a moose or a bear. You have to apply for things on top of that. So it's very heavily regulated. Lots and lots of rules around guns in Canada. So if you're seizing legally owned firearms, that's like taking the car keys away from people who are stone cold sober and wanting to drive their legally owned cars because some knuckleheads get drunk and steal vehicles. That's the equivalent here. It makes 0 sense. And the government is going to try to manage it on top of all this. So on top of them trying to seize legally owned property from like hyper law abiding citizens in Canada, like we're big on rules, they're actually going to try to manage it themselves. This is going to be the Phoenix Pay program with firearms involved, and it's going to really supersize wasteful spending here.
Yeah. And, I'm not a hunter. I don't know anything about hunting. I don't know anything about guns, but
I could make you a mean moose stew, man, though. You'd like it.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure I would. But here's the thing. I don't think too many gang members are going to be, champing at the bit to go to a government office to hand over Trudeau their illegally acquired firearms. I don't think that's going to happen, right? But the thing is, don't take it from the taxpayer people about safety. Take it from the people who are on the front lines, who every day are out there trying to keep us safe. And what they say is that this program is going to be ineffective. Now, the RCMP union has been putting out a ton of good material on this, and they say that Trudeau's gun buyback, it's not going to address the root issues here, right? It's not going to address criminal activity. It's not going to stop gang activity, and it's not going to stop that illegal flow of guns across the border with the United States. And so they say it's not going to make us safer, but here is where it's really important. Not only will Trudeau's gun grab not make us safer, it could actually make things worse. And let me just read a quote for you here from the RCMP union. So these are the Mounties. Here's what they said. Quote, "It diverts extremely important personnel, resources, and funding away from addressing the more immediate and growing threat of criminal use of illegal firearms." So let me just break that down. They say that this gun buyback could divert resources away from actually cracking down on crime to and a very ineffective type of program, which is awful for us, right? So not only will it not improve safety, it could actually reduce safety. And Simmer, earlier on in this segment, we talked about how the gun buyback could cost up to $756 million, and that's just part of the cost. Well, I crunched the numbers, and for that money, we could be able to hire more than 1,200 police officers for 5 years. So,
Whoa.
the question is, what would you rather have? Would you rather have an extremely expensive program that targets law-abiding Canadians, or would you rather have more than 1,200 cops on the streets?
Well, I hadn't even crunched those numbers before. That's nuts. I think the answer is obvious. You'd want more cops on the street. You'd want more cops on the street and at the border, making sure that we're not getting an illegal flow of guns over top of the border, and making sure that gangbangers aren't using illegal firearms to hurt each other or other members of the public. It just, it seems like a no-brainer. And on top of all of this, taxpayers can't afford to take on this expensive and useless registry, or even part of the buyback program. It just sounds really silly. So for folks who want to know more about this, we've actually got an ebook that's out right now on the gun buyback or the firearm seizure, whatever phrase you want to use. We're going to include it in the show notes. So if you want to go take a deeper dive into that, go check that out, and be sure to share it with all of your legal firearms owning friends, because if we don't rally around this and push back, it's just going to go through. We're not going to be safer. Our property is going to be seized, and we're going to waste around $1 billion or more. And please help us fight Trudeau on this gun grab. Go to our website and sign our petition, which we will of course include in the show notes. Okay, let's lighten up. It's time for Waste Watch. That last segment really made me mad. So this is when we talk about politicians and bureaucrats wasting your money and flushing it away, so to speak. So that works, of course, because our story is actually about a really lavish lavatory. Franco, so you're all set. You're actually in a hotel room. You're all packed and ready to go to Ottawa. Are you ready, my friend, for the gold-plated bidets on Bank Street, which await you?
Oh, man. I don't think I'm ready for a $19,000 washroom. So let me just take a step back here. Crazy. We saw this. It was originally reported by Blacklock's reporter. Man, are they ever doing a good job digging up a bunch of government waste? They are in the business of government waste, just like we are, it seems. And I guess business is pretty good there. So let me take a step back. $19,000 was paid so a bureaucrat, an executive bureaucrat, could have their own bathroom. It's almost like you have bureaucrats in Ottawa who are watching our show and are just teeing us up for a bunch of jokes about flushing our tax dollars down the toilet.
Yeah, no kidding. This had better be a gold-plated toilet. Did Donald Trump install this? I have to ask. This is just ridiculous. Honestly, how did they spend this much money? I will say, if you haven't spent a lot of time in Ottawa, flying out there and landing there from Western Canada is kind of a shock. You wander around Parliament Hill, and the thought that came to my mind is, oh, this is where all of our money is going. But I wasn't expecting $19,000 on one bathroom. I got to ask, what kind of fixtures must have been in here? Why is it that a bureaucrat is actually getting an executive washroom? Why do they need an executive washroom?
Yeah, well, this was the well, first, they don't need an executive washroom. Let's just say that one right off the top. Now, this executive washroom was supposed to be for the head of the public health agency, right? And she was earning over $270,000. So, just the salary alone, a huge six-figure salary, and then a $19,000 for your own executive washroom. Absolutely crazy. Now, she eventually ended up leaving that position. And, well, don't feel too bad. Don't shed a tear, because she landed in a lateral position, also bringing in that $270,000 plus salary. So life's not too hard over there.
Talk about a golden parachute right over to another, bureau drawer. That's just unbelievable. So we need to make fun of her once she gets an executive bathroom over there too. But I wanted to ask, do you hear this kind of stuff coming out of Ottawa frequently? Like every time I try to scratch beneath the surface on spending, it seems, and we send in an ATIP or an FOI, as we call them, they seem to just constantly waste money. And it's stuff like this that really bothers people, because they can relate to it. they ask themselves, gee, where is my washroom when I'm at work? Usually it's obviously, shared by staff. Most
Yeah.
people don't get an executive washroom. And frankly, this is not Apple. This is not Google. She's not running Ford Motor Company. She's a bureaucrat. She does not need a corner bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, and now she's in the Department of Employment, and like we don't know. I mean, of course, we are going to keep an eye out to see if she gets her own executive bathroom over there. We got our investigative journalist James Wood. He's going to be filing a bunch of FOIs when it comes to all this, and we're going to keep poking our noses and just seeing if there's any other executive washrooms that are being built on our money. But you mentioned Ottawa. You mentioned, when you're there, this makes sense. This is where all of our tax dollars go to die. And just one story that just comes to mind here is, and we talked about this on the show, is the renovations for Parliament Hill, right?
Yeah.
Costing $5 billion to renovate Center Block. And like, okay, we understand that you have to keep these buildings in good shape, but $5 billion, to me, it just seems like these bureaucrats just don't understand that taxpayers work really hard for our money, because it doesn't seem to me like they're making a conscious effort to try to do things as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, exactly. There's Cinder Block, and the one that always jumps out at me was the skating rink.
Crazy.
Them spending money on a skating rink on Parliament Hill when the world's longest skating rink is literally like a slap shot away. That was unbelievable at the Rideau Canal. It's just nuts. Absolutely. So get used to it. Unfortunately, once you land there, you will be shocked every time you look around at the amount of waste. But folks, if you're listening and watching this and it's driving you crazy, we understand, but you can either laugh or cry. So instead of crying about it, laugh along with us. Be sure to head over to our website, taxpayer.com. We actually have a really cool store there, and you can buy swag. You can buy shirts, you can buy hats, you can buy jackets even, and be sure to check out our show notes, and we'll give you a 15% off promo code, and you can save some money there.
Yeah. And, before we let you off the hook, we just got to say thank you so much for watching. Thanks. We really enjoy it. We really enjoy being able to kind of laugh about waste watch and hammer these politicians when they spend our money in crazy ways. So we hope you enjoy the show as well. And we have to give out a huge thank you to our investigative journalist, James Wood. We also got Grant, the video guy, who's helping us with some editing. He does some great job. So thanks, fellas. We really appreciate your work, and we really appreciate you making it sound like we know what we're talking about. And one last thing before we go, please like, share, subscribe, and share this video and this podcast with your friends and families so more taxpayers can join the fight.
Catch you next week.
Hi, I'm Scott Hennig, president of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. If you've got another minute, I'd like to ask you to think about the one person you know that would really enjoy listening to this podcast. Do us a favor and do them a favor and send them a quick note to let them know about it. At the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we believe there is power in numbers. That's why we've worked so hard to build an army of taxpayers who are ready to push back. And we did it because people like you shared our work with that one person that they knew would really appreciate taking part. Thanks for listening, and thanks for doing your part to make Canada a better place.